Right now, there's a small chance you're not real, not in the way you think. Your childhood bedroom, the first time you fell in love, the face of someone you lost, all of it might be running on hardware in a data center in a reality you'll never see, built by people who don't even know your name. This isn't science fiction anymore. Some of the most respected minds in physics and philosophy think there's a real calculable chance it's true. Here's the actual argument. Not the movie version, the philosophical one. It was formalized in 2003 by philosopher Nick Bostrom, and it goes like this. Imagine any civilization advanced enough to run full conscious simulations of their own history, ancestor simulations populated by minds that don't know they're simulated. If even one civilization anywhere in the universe reaches that level of technology and chooses to run even a handful of these simulations, the math gets strange fast, because a civilization that can run one simulation can probably run millions, which means the number of simulated conscious minds would vastly outnumber the real ones. So Bostrom's argument isn't we're definitely in a simulation. It's narrower and stranger than that. It says at least one of these three things must be true. Civilizations almost always destroy themselves before reaching that level of technology. Or advanced civilizations exist but choose never to run these simulations. Or we are almost certainly living inside one right now. Notice what that means. If you reject option 1 and option 2, you're not left with maybe. You're left with overwhelming odds, not because it's spooky, because of simple math about how many simulated minds would exist compared to real ones. So what would actual evidence even look like? This is where it gets interesting, because physicists have proposed real testable ideas, not proof, but genuine research directions. One is called the holographic principle, a serious idea in theoretical physics suggesting our three-dimensional universe might be a projection of information encoded on a two-dimensional surface, the same way a hologram works. Some researchers have looked for evidence of this using extremely sensitive instruments called interferometers, hunting for a kind of background graininess in space-time itself, like pixels if you zoom in far enough. Another angle comes from quantum mechanics. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles behave differently depending on whether they're being observed or measured. Some have pointed to this as suggestive of a rendering system, like a video game only loading detail when a player looks directly at it. Most physicists are careful here. This is a genuine, unsolved mystery in quantum mechanics, but it doesn't require a simulation to explain it. There are other interpretations that don't involve computers at all, and then there's the universe's own math. Physicist Max Tegmark has pointed out that reality at its deepest level seems to run on precise mathematical laws, the same way a simulation would need underlying code. That doesn't prove a simulation, but it's the kind of universe you'd expect if one existed. None of this is confirmed. All of it is real, ongoing science, which is why this theory refuses to go away. Here's why this idea grips people so much harder than typical science content. It doesn't just ask what's true, it asks what matters if it were. If you are, in some sense, a character in someone else's simulation, does your pain still count? Does your love still count? Philosophers who take this seriously mostly land on the same answer. Yes, experience is experience, regardless of what it's running on. A simulated fire still burns. A simulated loss still grieves. If anything, some argue this should raise the stakes. If this really is the one life you get to run inside whatever this is, that makes it more precious, not less. There's also something strangely comforting buried in here. If we're being simulated by something. Someone chose to run this, chose to include sunsets and music and second chances and the specific way rain smells right before it starts. That's either a coincidence of physics or it's a choice, and a lot of people find that thought oddly less lonely than the alternative. Now, the real scientific pushback, and because this deserves it, critics point out the biggest problem immediately. This theory is currently unfalsifiable. There's no experiment that could definitively prove or disprove it with today's technology, and a theory that can't be tested sits outside of what most scientists consider real science. It's philosophy wearing a physics costume. There's also a deeper logical issue called the simulation regress. If simulated civilizations eventually build their own simulations and those build more, you get infinite layers stacking on top of each other, with no way to know which layer, if any, is the real one. Some philosophers argue that breaks the whole premise rather than supporting it, and practically, even if it's true, it changes almost nothing about how you should live today. You still feel pain, you still love the people in front of you, you still have to get up tomorrow. A civilization running your code doesn't hand you a cheat sheet. So, are we living in a simulation? Nobody knows. Nick Bostrom himself has said he isn't fully convinced either way. What he built wasn't a prophecy. It was a math problem that's uncomfortably hard to escape. But maybe sit with this for a second. Whether or not this is a simulation, it's the only one you've got access to, the only body, the only timeline, the only version of the people you love. If it's real, that's precious. And if it's a simulation, someone built it well enough that you'd never want to leave. Maybe that's why this idea has survived for so long. Not because it's been proven, but because it forces us to look at reality differently. Whether the universe is made of atoms or algorithms, every decision you make still belongs to you. Every conversation still matters. Every moment still happens only once, and maybe that's enough. Comment below, real or simulated, and subscribe for the next one.